this recording, we're going to discuss hair, nails, and glands. Your hair, nails, and glands are all accessory structures of your integumentary system. They are derived from epithelium only, and their job is to assist in the overall functions of your integumentary system. Your hair specifically, or your pili, are small. They're filamentous. They protrude from the surface of your skin everywhere except your thick skin. Okay, and we talked about that's your palms and your soles, your lips, and parts of your external genitalia. Now, hair itself is composed of stratified squamous keratinized epithelial cells, just like your epidermis. And we have a few portions that we're going to discuss. The shaft is what you are most familiar with. That's the portion that projects from the skin. The root is where the hair is embedded into the dermis. Okay. There is a small sensory neuron associated with the hair root. That's why anytime you rip out a hair, it hurts. Okay. The root and the hair papilla are collectively known as your hair bulb. And many of these epithelial cells in the root are still alive, and because they have not completed the keratinization process. And remember, so if it's fully keratinized, then it's really no longer a living cell, okay? And yet hair still grows, and so something has to be alive. It's these lower cells in the hair root that are still growing and dividing. All of this is surrounded by another layer. This is your dermal root sheath. This is where your erector pili muscle attaches. Remember, this is actually a smooth muscle. Okay? And smooth muscle, if you remember, is under involuntary control by your nervous system. And so you can't just think really hard and make your little arm hairs stand up on ends. This is an involuntary response. But when your erector pili muscles contract, this does cause your little hairs to stand up. We call this piloerection. Okay. Now, hair does not grow super fast. You're getting maybe 1 to 1.5 centimeters per month, and that hair growth is not continuous. Hair grows in a cycle instead. We've got two main phases, and you're going to like these phases, y'all. You have a growth phase and a resting phase. Guess what happens during your growth phase? You're going to grow a little bit. Y'all, we're going to do some mitosis. Okay, we're going to do cell division. Those new cells are going to push up those older cells. Eventually, we're going to get so far away from the blood supply that they will keratinize and die, just like the layers of the epidermis itself. And then we have a resting stage. Mitosis has ended. Okay. And specifically, mitosis is happening in the matrix. So mitosis, matrix, this is where hair grows. When we are at rest, we are not doing mitosis, and the cells will die. Now, when this happens, the hair follicle will shorten, and it gets pushed towards the surface, and it will stay dormant there for a month, maybe 2. That dead, dormant hair follicle will eventually fall out all on its own. It might get ripped out, or it will be pushed out by a new hair growing in its place. Okay? So you have places where your hair grows, and the old one just gets pushed out by the new one. Okay? We do have different types of hair. We have lanugo, which is thin, non-pigmented hair. This covers basically your whole body as a fetus. Tends to fall out around the time of birth. Might not be 100% gone by the time you are born, but it is replaced as you go with either terminal hair or vellus hair. Now, terminal hair is thicker, coarser, it's very pigmented. This is what surrounds your eyes, and it's on your scalp, so your eyebrows and your head hair. And then you have vellus hair. This is thinner, non-pigmented hair. This is the rest of your body hair. Now, then we hit puberty. Okay, so terminal hair replaces a lot of your vellus hair after puberty. Okay, so like a little kid, you're really only going to have the hair, the terminal hair, your eyebrows and your scalp. Everything else is pretty much going to be vellus hair. But puberty, okay, a lot of that vellus hair will also then get turned into terminal hair. Okay, so more hair gets replaced depending on whether you're a male or a female. In which areas get turned into terminal hair will also be determined by the male versus female. Okay. Hair color itself is largely determined by melanin production from the melanocytes in the hairs themselves. We do get a nice range of colors here as well. Melanocytes become less productive as we get older, so hair eventually turns either gray or white just from the lack of melanin. Now your nails. These are hard accessory structures. These are located at the ends of your digits, so you have fingernails and toenails. These are also stratified squamous epithelial tissue. You do have hard keratin here as well. And so hair is made of basically the same thing as nails, which are basically made of the same thing as the epidermis itself. It's really just about what's filling up those keratinocytes. Your nail plate, okay, is basically the portion of the nail that you can see. It sits on top of a nail bed, okay, your epidermal nail bed. We divide the nail plate into the nail body, which is really what we can see, the visible portion of the nail plate. Okay, so that's this part. Okay, so all this is what we can see and touch and paint. Okay, and then you have the nail root. Okay, this lies under the skin, so it would be this portion back here under the skin, under the cuticle. Okay, this is where your nail matrix lives. So what happened in the hair matrix? Mitosis. Guess what happens in the nail matrix? Mitosis. Okay, so this is where your nails grow. This is actively dividing cells, and this should really make sense. If this is your nail matrix underneath the skin, all of those new cells are going to push those old cells this away, and you know this is the direction of your nail growth. Your nails get longer here. Okay. Now, you do have folded regions of skin that surround and reinforce the nail plate. You have a proximal nail fold. Okay, a lot of times you'll hear this termed your cuticle. Okay, the distal portion of that specifically is called your cuticle or aponicum. Now, I think this is just very interesting. This little cuticle consists of only stratum corneum. I just think that's very interesting. Okay, just one cell thick, or excuse me, one cell layer thick. That's it, corneum. That's all you get. No spinosum, no granulosum, just corneum. I just think that's interesting. Now, additional accessory organs include your glands. Okay. These are going to synthesize and secrete different products. We do technically have two different kinds of glands. We have both endocrine and exocrine glands. Endocrine glands are going to secrete their products, which are usually hormones, directly into the bloodstream without the use of ducts. Exocrine glands, however, are going to secrete their substances onto the apical surface of epithelial tissue, and a lot of these do require ducts. And these epithelial tissues can be both on the inside and the outside of the body. The ones that we're going to talk about, most of these are just going to be on the outside of your body. But endocrine glands, because we are putting the hormones in the blood, they can have a much wider effect because your blood goes everywhere. The exocrine glands, since you're putting them on apical surfaces of the epithelial tissue, the effects are really only local. Okay, it's just wherever you're secreting that substance, it's working right there. It's not really spreading. So the first type of gland we can talk about is actually a goblet cell, okay, which is kind of unique in and of itself because it's just one cell. Okay, so this isn't a big glandular structure. It's literally just a little cell. Look at it. Okay, you find these in your digestive and your respiratory tracts. These create and secrete mucus, and so all these little white blobs, these are your mucus droplets. We're opening up, we're releasing the mucus. Okay, it's thick, it's sticky, it helps protect the epithelial tissue. Okay, most of your exocrine glands are multicellular glands, but this one's just, it's our exception to the rule. It's just one little cell. Okay. Now, the rest of the glands, they are going to be multicellular, and they come in a couple varieties, and it's basically determined by how they secrete their product. So we have merocrine secretion, and we have holocrine secretion. Merocrine secretion happens, and this is the majority of your exocrine glands, your salivary glands, your sweat glands, things like that. These work by secreting the product. So whatever we're going to do, we're going to release it into the gland, and we're going to secrete it into the duct, and it's going to go wherever it needs to go. Okay, so sweat glands, obviously the sweat would be going to the surface of the skin. Okay, now holocrine secretion, a little bit different. Okay. This is how your sebaceous glands work, which your sebaceous glands are your oil glands. They can release sebum, which is oil. So basically, the sebum accumulates inside of the cells to the point where eventually they just kind of blow up. So the cell ruptures and they die, but the oil itself ends up in the ducts, and then it makes its way up the duct itself. So, so these are a little bit different. So merocrine, you're just more doing like exocytosis, and you're putting the product in the duct and it's going up the duct. Holocrine secretion, you are basically blowing up a cell to get the substance in the duct to where it works its way up. Notice that we're going to have to do some mitosis here to replace the cells that are blowing up. We don't need to do that with the merocrine secretion because we're not blowing up anything. So that's quite a bit different. Now, in addition to just the two different ways to secrete products, we do have a couple of types of glands that we're going to focus on for your skin specifically. We do have sweat glands, known as sudoriferous glands, and we do have sebaceous glands that produce the oil or the sebum that's been previously mentioned. Let's go one at a time. So sweat glands, first of all, you technically have 4 different types of sweat glands. They all work through merocrine secretion, so nobody's blowing up. Everybody's just doing exocytosis. You have eccrine, or eccrine and apocrine sweat glands. Eccrine, or I always say eccrine, but eccrine sweat glands, these are the most prevalent type. Okay, so these are the ones that you probably think of when you think about yourself sweating. These produce sweat that is mostly water and electrolytes, so it's kind of salty. And the sweat itself exits from ducts through the sweat pores straight onto the epidermal surface. Okay, so again, like these are the ones that, like if you think about yourself getting hot and sweaty, you're thinking about eccrine sweat glands. Now, apocrine sweat glands are a little bit different because these are found in very particular areas of your body. Your axillary region, your anal region, and your areolar regions. These are much larger glands themselves, and this type of secretion is different. So it's not a salty, watery sweat. This is a protein-rich secretion, and it's released into a hair follicle, which is also a bit different. It's not going directly onto the epidermal surface. But these secretions can become odoriferous. You might know what odoriferous means. It means stinky. Okay, it has a bad odor. So once the skin bacteria metabolize the contents, this protein-rich secretions, once that happens, it produces a foul odor. These become active after puberty because they're influenced by sex hormones, and obviously sex hormones trigger puberty. So if your pit's stinky, or if your anal region gets all hot and sweaty and things like that, this is the apocrine sweat glands that we're talking about now. You can see the secretion. Here's your eccrine sweat glands. The duct goes right up onto the surface. the apocrine sweat glands. Instead, the duct goes onto the hair. Okay. All right. We said we have 4 types of sweat glands. Here's the other 2. We have ceruminous glands and we have mammary glands. Your ceruminous glands, these are a modified apocrine gland. They release something called cerumen. You know this as earwax. Earwax, y'all. Earwax. This also gets secreted onto the hair follicles, just specifically in the ear. We're trying to trap particles that make their way into our ear tube because we're trying to prevent damage to our tympanic membrane or eardrum. It also helps lubricate so sound waves can travel more efficiently through your ear canal. So earwax, okay, and then mammary glands, okay. These are specialized sweat glands. The modified sweat product is milk. I don't really know if we need to go into a lot more detail. Just stating facts. Mammary glands are a type of sweat gland. Milk is a modified sweat product. Now you know. You're ready for Jeopardy, y'all. You're ready for Jeopardy. Okay, now we have our sebaceous glands. These empty onto hair follicles or pores, okay, and they are going to secrete the sebum, the oil, okay. You find these everywhere except thick skin, so not on palms and soles, and you find the greatest number on your face and your scalp. So if you suffer from quote-unquote oily skin, this will not shock you at all. The secretion of the sebum is influenced by sex hormones, specifically testosterone. So during and after puberty, after the increase of testosterone has kicked in, that's when skin tends to get oilier. Okay. The sebum itself, not only is it oily, it's kind of waxy. It's really a lipid product. We are going to do the Holocrine secretion here, so we're going to have the little cells just basically blow up. Okay. Why are we doing this? Because it kind of sounds gross, right? But we are trying to coat the hair to provide it with a hydrophobic barrier to inhibit water loss. And it also inhibits growth of bacteria, and it can even just flat out kill bacteria sometimes. So this oily substance creates an unfavorable environment for bacterial growth.